So my topic today is marketing, and I'd like to start with a question, which is how many of you feel like marketing's adding something positive to the world around you? Just raise your hand nice and high. Okay, now how many people work in the business of marketing? Okay, so a lot of the same hands. Now, how many people realize that all of us are in the business of marketing? Because we're not just, okay, that was sort of a not raising your hand question. I wasn't clear on that one. I'm going to trick you throughout the presentation, so we've already started well. How many people realize that everything that we're doing is marketing when it comes to trying to convince your spouse where you're going to go to dinner, or trying to convince your kids to eat their vegetables as somebody shared at lunch? All of these tasks are marketing because it's all about trying to influence someone to do something. And the problem is that for marketers, marketing has a pretty big branding problem, which is people don't believe that marketing's adding anything positive to their life. People believe marketing is something to be avoided, right? Marketing is something to fast forward through. Marketing is something to ignore because it's going to bend you to its will, right? That's the problem that marketing's got. And what I'd like to do today is share 3 stories of why marketing needs to be reinvented and how it can be. One about a traveling salesman, one about an inventor, and the third one is basically going to try and bring all of these pieces together by telling you a little bit about a video game that was released in the 1980s that had an interesting lesson to it. So if we can start the images, please. The first story is about a guy named Aaron Montgomery Ward in 1872. Now, if you had a farm in 1872, you had a pretty big supply and demand problem. And your problem was that monopolies created their own world of what you could purchase and where you could purchase it from. So you had no choice about where to purchase anything from. And you had to go through the monopolies to buy everything that you needed. And Aaron Montgomery Ward, a traveling salesman in this world, decided that he was going to have to change this world. And the way he was going to do it was by cutting out the middleman and selling directly. Now, if you're going to sell directly to farmers, your problem is how do you get the farmers to know about the things that you're going to be selling? How do you get them to understand what you've actually got to say? And so he decided to do direct mail catalogs. And he started the direct mail revolution, because essentially what he'd said is, if I can mail these things directly to the farmers, then they'll know what I have to sell and they can order directly from me, and all I have to do is go out and deliver it. And it worked. And it worked so well that the company's still been around for over 100 years. And direct mail has sort of fostered the new landscape, the new revolution of marketing, which has happened over the last 100 years. And if you think about how this marketing has been described, and if you've ever taken a marketing course, you've seen what I call the Marketing Mirage, which is the 3 basic tenets of marketing that you're told are going to work. And so you focus your marketing on that. The first one is features, right? If I tell you that I've got this Buzz Lightyear doll and it's got a karate chop action, that's a cool feature. That's what every kid's going to want, and so they're going to buy it because of the feature, right? We all seen those bullet point lists. Maybe you have some for your own company. And essentially what you're saying is, these are the reasons why you should buy. Look at me, look at my product. This is great. It's going to solve the need. Here are the features that you should care about. The second is, you know what, the features don't matter that much. If I give somebody a second one for free, even if they didn't need the first one, they're going to buy it because, hey, everybody wants something for free, right? So you sell it based on the promotion. And you say, I give you 10% off, or I give you 1 for free, or 2 for free. And if you looked at some of those fireworks stores after the 4th of July, you kind of saw this in action, right? They used to give you 1, then they plus 1 for free, and then they had 2 for free. And I don't know, maybe they were giving away something else by the time they were trying to close. I didn't wander that far, but this model is always out there. The third one is demographics. And demographics say that if I know that my target audience, right, which is a term that marketers love, these warlike terms, right? Target audience, we've got to target them. We've got to hit them with our campaign to try and massage them to our will, right? And demographics are all about that, which is if my target audience is a female 25 to 34 living in a particular city, and I know that, then I can just purchase media that's going to reach that person, and I know that I'm going to reach that person because of the demographics that I've understood around them, right? And the census plays right into that because it measures demographics and it tells us that this is what we're going to be using for marketing. Now the problem is that in order to create this marketing organization, we've created these elaborate teams that are all based on these silos. So you've got your marketing team over here and your direct response team and your public relations team and your digital marketing team and your social media team, and I'm running out of stage, right? There's just so many different teams, and the problem is that when you have this many teams, these people over here don't necessarily talk to these people over here. And a lot of times their marketing campaigns are different, their organizations are different, they're based in different places, they're working with different marketing agencies, and it becomes really, really complicated. So that's the issue that marketing has right now, which is how are we going to, as an organization, deal with these changes in a world where our consumer is not the same consumer that it used to be, right? The consumer in the 1960s or 1970s was a mass media consumer, and you've probably heard this through lots of different marketing presentations. The consumer I equate to this baby here being fed by the food, right? The food, that yellow goop right there is your marketing message, and the baby's a consumer. And you're trying to get that food in there, and you know that it's going all over the place, but it's okay, right? Because if you've ever fed a kid like this, you know that it's messy, right? But the food gets in there. And at the end of the process, one of two things happens. Either the kid's fed, and then they poop and everything's regular on schedule, and you go back and you do it again a couple hours later. Or that food comes right back out, right on top of you, nothing worked, and the kid didn't like the thing in the first place, and you thought it was working, and then it didn't work, and now you got to start all over again. And that's what marketing was. We didn't know what was working, and we kind of started all over again. And the reason why this is so important now is because your consumer is different. Your consumer has control because it's a one-button economy. All the consumer has to do is plug the device in and press click, upload, share, create, comment, sign up, publish, and all of a sudden they're publishing stuff, right? Anybody can do it. I don't need to know any sort of technology. I don't need to be a geek. I am a geek, but I don't need to be, right, to do these things. Because now all I have to do is press a button. Anyone can do it. And the challenge with that is in this ecosphere of stuff that's out there, there's lots of crap, right? Because not everybody's good at it. People can do it, but they're not good at it, which is why when you search on Google, you get the top 10 results and you get 3,785,000 other pages, right? Now a lot of that's crap, but anybody can do it. So that's why this bubble is exploding, right? So as marketers, the challenge is that the bubble's exploding, but the reason why that should matter to all of us is that there's been a shift in why that makes a difference. And the shift is that for the first time in human history, something called virtual trust exists. And virtual trust means that I will trust the opinion of someone who I don't know, who no one in my network knows, and who I have no way of verifying whether they're real or not, or whether they're credible or not. But I'll still trust them. If 10 people all say that a digital camera is not good on Amazon, I'll believe that, even if I don't know who those 10 people are. Now, you can debate whether that's right or wrong, and that's not really what I'm focused on today. What I'm focused on today is the fact that that influences people. So when people write stuff on Wikipedia, it's a crowdsourced encyclopedia, and they do reports where they look at medical content on Wikipedia. They compare it to peer-reviewed journals, and they find the content in Wikipedia to be more accurate than a peer-reviewed scientific journal. How is that possible? Right? How is it possible that we have this virtual trust in content that's being created by all of these different people? And how does that relate to what we need to do when it comes to marketing? Now, if you look back 100 years, you realize that the problem with marketing was never that we didn't have the tools to measure. The problem was that as we measured, we realized that we were wasting a lot of what we were doing. And that is a relatively easy thing if you know which half is being wasted, because you can just cut it. And 100 years ago, it was half. Today, I'd venture to guess it's maybe 90% being wasted. And the challenge is that as marketers, what do we need to do differently in order to deal with this 90% that's being wasted? And I say 90% because, as we all know, 75% of statistics are totally made up. So it doesn't matter, right? So the irony of this is that we've gotten really good at measuring how badly it's working. So we have these spreadsheets that we fill out year after year, and they have the same columns, and they stifle innovation because if you want to do something new and you want to compare it to last year, there's no column in your spreadsheet for that. So what are you going to do? How are you going to compare it? How are you going to sell that to your boss, your business partner, whoever needs to be able to believe in that, right? It's impossible. Because if you have no basis for comparison, then the first thing somebody does at every new idea is, love that idea. Nobody's ever done it before. Can you show me an example of where that's been done so that I can believe in that and so that I can do it, right? How many people have that situation? Everybody wants to know who else has done it before. And the measurement puts a big challenge on this. So let's talk about invention, right? Because invention is the idea of creating something that is so new and that's so different that you're solving a particular need. And the wheelbarrow has been pretty much the same since ancient Greece, right? It's got these stiletto heels, as I saw them called online, and this one wheel, and it's basically if you fill it too far on one side or the other side, the whole thing tips over. So an inventor in 1974 decided that what he was going to do was reinvent this wheelbarrow into a ball barrow. And the ball barrow was going to solve the major issues, the major flaws in design of the wheelbarrow, which was that it had a ball so it wouldn't rip through your garden and create like a trench, basically. And it wouldn't have those stiletto heels, it would have boots essentially, so it wouldn't really tip over, right? Now, the interesting thing about this is not necessarily that it was a world-changing thing, because if it was, in 1974, we'd all have ball barrows today and not wheelbarrows, right? How many people have a ball barrow? Okay, nobody, right? So clearly, this idea didn't quite work, and it signals that there's more to having a great idea and putting it out there than just having a great idea, right? Or having a great story behind it. But the really interesting thing is that the guy behind it you might recognize, who's James Dyson. And Dyson is probably the first person I've ever read of that has become famous for creating a product that sucks on purpose, which is his vacuum cleaners, right? He reinvented vacuum cleaners. And what he did to reinvent vacuum cleaners is he said at one particular moment that, you know what, all of these vacuum cleaners lose suction. The tagline of Dyson's vacuums is, they don't lose suction, right? And the revolutionary part about that wasn't the suction part. It was the fact that he said that vacuum cleaners don't need bags anymore. We can have bagless vacuum cleaners. And he took this idea and he pitched it to every single vacuum manufacturer that was in the market before he actually went off on his own. He pitched it to Hoover, pitched it to all the other vacuum cleaner manufacturers. And they all said the same thing, which is our business model is basically like the printers with the ink. We make all the money off the bags. Why would we possibly want to get rid of these bags? How could we possibly sustain our business if all we're doing is selling vacuum cleaners when we make all our money on the bags long term? So he said, you know what, I'm going to go off and I'm going to do it on my own. And the reason why it worked on his own wasn't because of either the suction or because of the bagless vacuum. The reason was because the way he created this product was a story that you could tell somebody else because it was a design centerpiece. And if you look at some of the first vacuums that he created, they're actually in museums in Tokyo and around the world as art pieces, not as products. Because having this vacuum cleaner said something about you, and it still says something about you, and people still talk about the fact that they've got the Dyson vacuum cleaner, right? So then he decided to turn to another big problem, which is fans, right? And fans have been working the same way for years and years and years. And what he decided to do is he decided to reinvent the fan by giving a name to the problem that he was solving. And the problem he was solving was what's called buffeting, right? Now, I don't even know as a marketer whether that's a real word. Right? Somebody in science may know, but that doesn't even matter. What matters is he takes the visual and he says that every air that is being thrown by a fan is being chopped in this circular format. And what his fan does is it just gives you this simple stream that goes straight, right? So instantly you get why this is different. But if you look at this fan, if you've seen one of these fans in a store, it makes you stop. You stop and you look at this fan and you think, what is this? What is this thing? What does it do? How does it work? And you stand in front of it and you're like, wow, that is really cool. Not just because I get this nice even flow of air, right? Maybe that's important to some people, right? I know that in certain movies the hair's got to be flowing and that's maybe they use it for that, right? But for other people it's a story piece. It's something that they can share, something that they can tell. Now, creating a story that is shareable is much more important than creating a story. We talk a lot, or at least I talk a lot in marketing about storytelling. Storytelling is essentially the idea that you go and you have a story and you share it with somebody. Getting a retellable story is where really powerful marketing happens, because when you do that, you create a story that somebody else can tell to somebody else. Now, you know who doesn't know who this guy is on this, and who doesn't know that he's about to fall off the wall, right? Everybody knows that. Why do we know that? We know that because it's a story that can be retold. It's a story that we all know inherently, and sure, it's a nursery rhyme, but the nursery rhyme is a really powerful lesson, because what it tells us is that we need a simple, shareable story. And if it's not simple enough, and if it's not shareable, then it'll just be a story from one person to another person. And that's where marketing dies. Because you can tell a great story to one person, but if you can't tell it in a way that somebody can then retell it to everyone else that they know, then you failed. Because it's not going to transfer from person to person. So the last thing that I'll talk about that I promised was the video game from the 1980s. How many people recognize this video game? A couple, okay. So this game was called Contra, and it was released by a Japanese company called Konami. And Konami had a really great game on their hands with one major flaw, and that major flaw was that it was way too hard. Nobody could ever beat it. It was an arcade game. You got 3 lives to start, and 3 lives were nowhere near enough to make it through the 8 labyrinthian levels. And maybe some super players could do it, but nobody else could do it. But Konami did something really interesting, which is that they built in what's called now the Konami code, which was a secret cheating code that allowed you to press up, up, down, down, left, right, B, A, start, on the control pad. And by doing that, you got 30 lives instead of 3 lives. And when you got 30 lives instead of 3 lives, you can make it all the way through the game, and you could have this immersive experience, and you could actually win, and you would tell all your friends about it, and everybody knew about the cheating code. Now, what made that so powerful? Was it a great game? Sure, maybe it was. But the cheating code let people see that. The cheating code gave you a social currency, something that you could tell and retell and share with other people. And that was what made this one of the most popular games for the Nintendo system. The emotional connection of something like that is similar to the emotional connection you get from a site like PostSecret, which some of you may know, which is done by an amazing guy named Frank Warren, who actually lives in this area. And what Frank does is every Sunday morning, he curates postcards that are sent to him completely anonymously and in secret by people sharing these really deep emotional secrets. And if you go to postsecret.com and you read some of these secrets, they're so immersive that you cannot help but start to feel a connection to the site and to who's behind the site and to people who don't even sign their names most of the time against these postcards. But it's an emotional connection. It's a story that you can retell. So the last thought that I'll leave you with is that when it comes to marketing and when it comes to reinventing marketing, it's not about retelling the features and the benefits and having something that somebody can connect to. What it's about is having a story that you can tell and that someone else can take, make their own, and retell. Thank you.